So the basics, first off, tell us who you are and what kind of artist you consider yourself.
Okay. My name is Kristin DeBockler, and I am kind of jack of all trades artist. I do a lot of different stuff. So I guess mostly an illustrator would probably be like the best description, but I do, like I said, a lot of different stuff. T-shirts, paintings, graphic design. I do a lot of work for bands. So
what would you say your main avenue of work is for? Like of your work is, I guess.
Oh, all of that. That's the hardest part. Is like at any given time, I'm doing any number of different things. So like right now, I've got a T-shirt launching tomorrow with Bifocal Media for the band Whores. Can I say that? Is that okay? Am I allowed to swear? Am I in trouble?
The proper noun.
Whores with a period at the end. So they're a band that I've done some like ad mats and flyers for before, and a couple of other T-shirts. And there's the train. Every time. Very good. So yeah, so they're letting me do another T-shirt. It's coming out tomorrow. It's like a limited edition thing with 300 pieces, and we might do something after that, but for now, that's what I've got going on. And then the other thing I'm doing right now a lot is nesting dolls. So like custom nesting dolls of different pop culture things. So I've done the Munsters and Trailer Park Boys, and I'm working on What We Do in the Shadows right now, and I have about 6 other commissions afterwards, like The Remote, The Addams Family, and Steve Brule, a bunch of other stuff.
Where did the nesting dolls idea come from? It's so off the wall.
Yeah, well, I like doing stuff like that though. So like when I paint on canvases, it's fun and everything, but I really like doing like kind of odd stuff that people don't normally do, or painting on like weird canvases or weird shapes or whatever. So, I think my partner was on tour, and I was just kind of trying to do something to kind of fill up the time, because when he's not there, you know, I'm largely by myself for the most of 2 months. So I have all the time in the world to basically do whatever I want. Not to mention, well, he's also an artist too, so that's not really fair, because I really get to do whatever I want all the time. So it's really nice having someone that understands that you want to paint or draw or do all this stuff for hours at a time, and then be able to, you know, not feel guilty about doing it. So he's very encouraging. So I think the first set was the Trailer Park Boys, and I just thought it would be fun to kind of, I don't even know where I came up with the idea from, but I went right online and found blanks for the dolls and was like, I could do so many different ones. And I've got one now that's like 10 pieces, and the largest doll is probably about a foot tall. What? And then the small one is like really teeny tiny. And I'm going to do Pee-wee's Playhouse for that one, so that should be good.
I was going to say, what can you do with
Will one of them be a bicycle?
Well, well, that's the thing, like for the last 2 dolls, I always try to do something that's like a little bit different. So like when I did the Trailer Park Boys, the last 2 were, I don't know if you're familiar with the show at all, but it was Randy. And then he had, the smallest doll was a stack of cheeseburgers to go in his gut, because they all nest inside each other. And then I did King of the Hill, and the smallest one was Ladybird, the dog. So for the Pee-wee one, I'm planning on doing, and I'm just throwing this out there, but I might not end up doing it, but I'll probably do the Alamo, and then do the bicycle as the smallest one.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like in the basement, even though the Alamo doesn't have a basement.
Right.
You know, because I've only seen that movie about 1,200 times.
It's a classic. So I know you do a lot of band stuff, and like I do a lot of band stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And just curious, how much, if any, of your stuff that gets rejected do you reuse for anything, not necessarily like as is, but in concept or anything like that? How much of that do you reuse either for your personal art or for like reimagined for another client?
That's tough, because usually when I'm working with a client, they have something, well, that's not true. Sometimes they have something specific in mind, and most of the time they don't. I don't really get stuff rejected too much, though. Not to like toot my own horn or anything, but no. Yeah, I don't. So I guess, you know, I end up using everything for something. You know, I'll make prints of it if it's decent. usually I just do a bunch of concept sketches and then send them to them and then kind of work with them with what they like about it and what they don't. But I've been really lucky that most of the bands that I've worked with have kind of just said, go ahead, or, you know, have either that or they have like a really specific idea. And when I send them a sketch of what's going on, they're usually pretty happy with it. And I only have to amend it a little bit. So,
well, you've been doing it for a long time, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I feel like you get to a point where you're getting hired for your creative input, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that has something to do with not getting rejected too often.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I've thrown stuff out at other bands too before, you know, but it's usually just that they don't want to do something. So like with bifocal, it's really hard because I am super introverted. So like approaching bands and being like, hey, do you want to do this thing is like really difficult because, you know, in my head, I'm like, well, the worst they're going to do is say no. But the, you know, the anxious part of me is like, I can't fucking do this. Excuse my language. So, you know, that's the part I have the hardest time with. But the bands that I've worked with, I've been lucky enough that they have been really, you know, excited usually with what I do. And if they don't like it, they don't like it, and they tell me, and then I don't really spend too much time being upset about it. I kind of move on to something else.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, especially with like the t-shirts and stuff are a little bit more important than the ad mats because they get printed, you know, for sale. Whereas the ad mats, it's like just doing something that's eye-catching enough to bring people to their shows, you know?
Yeah, it's a little more disposable.
Mm-hmm. And they'll always let me do really weird stuff too, which is like, I'm not a traditional painter by any means or a traditional illustrator. Like nothing that I do is anywhere near that. So, you know, usually the weirder the better, I guess.
Do you have any traditional training?
Yes. I've been drawing and painting since I was really little. And I briefly went to art school. And I studied digital animation. So that was like, I was hell-bent on doing that. I'm like, I'm going to be an animator and this is going to be awesome. And then as I got into it more, I was like, this is really technical and there's less like creative input to what I'm doing and more just like kind of meandering around programs and like manipulating vertices and everything. And that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So, but we all had to take design classes and art classes because it was an art related major. So even if you were just studying the digital portion of it, you still had to take like figure drawing and fundamentals of drawing and perspective and all of that, which I found, I don't want to say that art school was a waste of time because it wasn't. And I met lots of nice people. But really a lot of what I did, I already knew how to do. And they did help me like hone those skills, but you know, it wasn't like some grand epiphany where it was, you know, super helpful. And I was like, well, now finally I can be an artist. I was like, well, I always was an artist. It's just now I can do it a little bit better, but it's really just, it's practice over anything, you know, just repetition.
When you were in school or before, or when you finished or whatever, were you already doing art for hire, or was this something that you, okay, so how did you start doing that? Like what were you doing before the schooling stuff that kind of made you go that way?
Well, actually, before I did the schooling stuff, I was working like really horrible retail jobs. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, everybody has to work retail jobs. I mean, like, I'm not talking about like small businesses like Rebus works here, where I actually enjoy being here and can do things. I'm talking about like big corporations. Like I worked at a Kmart for a while doing customer service. I can't tell you the horrors that you witness like working in a large big box store and the people you encounter. How many times I had to like clean up after people, or there was one, I worked at an art store as an accountant, and a woman had a helper pony, which she punched in the face, and we had to call the cops. Yeah, it was awful. She had made like all these, she had like fashioned this t-shirt for this tiny little horse that she had shoved in the back of her car, and the horse was helping her get around the store because she was in a wheelchair. Not all the time, but most of the time. And so not only did the horse shit all over the store, but yeah, so I'm seriously not making, I mean, I can't make this up, it's ridiculous. So the horse pooped all over the store, so we had to deal with that. And then she was trying to leave, and the horse was trying to keep her from going across the road to the parking lot because there were cars coming, and I watched her just chuck the horse right in the side of the head, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like that was the final straw. Honestly, retail, I was like, I can't witness this. I can't just do that. I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah, where
So
Where was this?
in Utica, New York, at AC Moore.
Utica.
Can I
right?
say that? You might need to edit that out so they don't sue me.
We won't put the name. I was just wondering what town people have assistant horses in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely in Utica. We also had a gentleman that came in that was rehabilitating wildlife up in Old Forge, which was like about 45 minutes into the Adirondacks. And he came in all the time and he would buy mass quantities of these like foam stickers that were covered in glitter. Like they have them at like Michael's, and they're like just really weird craft stickers. And he was making all of these handmade drawings of like broken-legged deer and half-tailed squirrel, and like named all of these things. And there was always all these weird like proverbs and churchy, religious-y type things. So he would get like these crosses during Easter, and then he would give you, and this is what he would bring in, was like this fluorescent mimeographed card with all of this stuff in his drawings, and then like a Susan B. Anthony dollar taped on the inside, and then all of these glittery stickers like all over it. And he would sell them to people for $1, but he was also like putting $1 in the inside of the card, so it was very confusing as to how he was actually making any money for the animals that he was rehabilitating. Yeah, after that, so that store ended up closing, as most of, I think, the AC Moores have at this point. So when they closed, that was when I was like, I can't do this retail anymore. I can't do it. So that's when I was like, well, the state of New York is going to give me some money to go to school for like through unemployment, because I didn't have a job anymore, and I was, the whole store had closed, and I was like, well, I might as well take advantage of it. And that's how I got back into doing art again, because before that I had just kind of drawn on my own. And then when I was in school, people started asking if they could buy the projects that I was doing in class.
Nice.
And so I just started selling all of that stuff, like to other students and one to one of the teachers. And then it just kind of escalated from there, and I just kept going with it. So I wasn't really sure I was going to be able to make like a living doing it, because it's always a very tenuous thing, being like, well, I'm not going to have a traditional job and I'm just going to draw and create things. But, it works out. You just have to hustle a lot. Right? Yeah. You guys know.
Yeah.
You guys know how it is.
And so what's your ideal project? Like, I mean, I'm sure you do stuff that you enjoy and stuff that you'd rather not do. But what stuff are you enjoying? And your own stuff counts too, if that's.
Well, I can tell you what my least ideal project would be, I suppose. It's
When
you get a client who is really super specific about every single part of what you're doing, like down to every nitpicky detail, where they just want total creative control over what they're having you do, which, I mean, it's fine. That's what they want to pay for, but it always is just not quite as satisfying as when you have someone who wants to work with you on what you're doing, and you can kind of put your input in and they bounce ideas off of you and you go back and forth, and then you come up with something really cool. Like, that's fun, aside from just painting for myself, which is always a good time. That really is probably the most ideal project, like commercially, I would say. So t-shirts like fall into that. Doing portraits for people are pretty easy, only because they're technical and you don't really have to do too much with them. They just have to look like the person or the animal that you're doing, and then they don't, they're not usually too picky about it. Like, they don't want a Tyrannosaurus in the back or anything, but anything where they give you kind of like creative free reign too is awesome. So you can just do whatever you want. So anything that where I can just be my weird self and do whatever, then I'm totally into it.
Nice. So what got you doing events with your own work?
I'm trying to think. So I was selling stuff online when I lived in New Jersey, and a friend of mine who, let's see, where did I meet him? Oh, once again, I was working at another craft store. Okay, I lied. The AC Moore wasn't the last thing. When I moved, I got another job in retail and was working for another big box, like, art store. And one of the people that was stocking shelves with me was going to an event called SketchCon, where people were just setting up tables and bringing their art, and you could just sell whatever you wanted. Nobody cared. They advertised it. And they were just like, oh, bring whatever you want. And I was like, well, I've never actually like brought my stuff anywhere. I had shown people online and sold stuff like that, but never actually, I've had like gallery shows and stuff, but that's a lot different than like having a bunch of stuff with you and having people like look at it and ask you questions about it. So I did that and it went really well. And at that event, I met Joseph Kazemka from the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market. He had attended the event and he's like, hey, I have this big event that I'm planning and it's the Punk Rock Flea Market in Trenton. And you should bring your stuff because it would fit in really well. And it was I think the second time he had done it. And so that's really what got me started, were those punk rock flea markets. And that's actually why I ended up starting the one here in Raleigh, because when I moved down here, I was like, well, there's lots of cool stuff, but there's no punk rock flea market. And I kind of missed it. And I was like, I'll just start my own then.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that next, actually. I mean, I know what it is in essence, but are you putting that together yourself? Is that connected to, because I know you said you know the people who run the Trenton one and there's one in Philly or something you mentioned.
Yep, the Philadelphia Punk Rock Flea Market, and there's one in Asbury Park too that I do. And I still drive up there and sell my stuff there. Well, I don't right now because, we're in the nightmare of the year that is 2020.
Yeah,
but,
right.
when I'm allowed to travel into other states again, then I'll be going back up there. But yeah, they're not involved with the Raleigh market. It was just kind of like they inspired it.
Okay.
Just having a place for people whose art and like the things that they make aren't necessarily like the normal kind of things that you would expect at like a flea market or like a craft fair. And, talking to other people, like there's no place for them to sell stuff like that sometimes. So that's why I wanted to do the punk rock flea market, because it was like everybody's welcome there. You can sell whatever you want within reason, as long as it's not some kind of horrible propaganda for, like the Proud Boys or something terrible. Yeah, no Nazis, absolutely not. They will quickly get stomped. I say like I'm tough, I'm really not. But really though, I mean, anyone who's like inclusive and is into that kind of like sense of a community, like that's why I wanted to start it, because the people that I met up north were, we always call each other like our vendor family, because we see each other at all the same events over and over again, and we all are trying to make do with what we're doing and make a living like making weird stuff. So you kind of develop these nice friendships with these people, and then you have this nice community. So then you hear about other events through them, and that's how I met you guys. I'm pretty sure was, how did I meet you guys?
The internet?
One event or another.
I'm trying to remember if it was, I don't think it was a Chapel Hill thing. It was probably to merge, wasn't it?
I think we just like saw it on Instagram or something, right? It's like a local thing.
I think so.
It was an event,
like basement battle? Is that?
I think the first event that I did once I moved here was the Shark Fest. Is that Jaws Fest? Jaws Fest that was in Chapel Hill. I still to this day have no idea exactly what that was, but I was like, I like sharks. So, and I have like shark related things and I paint them. So this sounds like it'd be perfect. And I did it. And I was like, well, this isn't exactly what I expected, but it was still fun, and that's how I kind of started doing events here. And I think after that, I started just looking. Maybe that's how I found you guys. I think it was a super shop, maybe.
Probably.
I might have found it online or somebody told me about it.
Yeah, that's probably what it was, honestly. Have you found it weird or I shouldn't say weird, have you found it hard to find like appropriate events or even just worthwhile events down here compared to how prevalent I'm assuming they were back in New York and Jersey and that?
It's a little bit harder, yeah. I mean, there's also been like the night market has started up since I've been down here, and Sarah and Lauren at the night market are great, and they are very inclusive of, not just like traditional crafters and artisans and everything. And so, I did really well with them when that was still going on. And the Emerge events, I always did well with those. So yes and no. I mean, when I lived up there were a lot more opportunities just because like I lived right in the middle of the metro area between New York City and Philadelphia. So it's just like, there's a ton of stuff to do. Like there was a punk rock, a heavy metal flea market at the Queens Museum when they were doing the Ramones exhibit. So, Marky Ramone was there. And they had a whole bunch of different stuff going on, and that was fun, but we don't really get anything like that here.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of events here too that I'm not going to mention by name, but they haven't gone especially well. And it's not for a lack of trying, I don't think. And it's not you guys. I promise you.
We've had some bombs too. We
yeah.
fully admit.
Everything in Cary never works out for us.
No.
It's like, for some reason, it's a whole nother world there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when I moved down here, I didn't really understand. People were like, I don't ever go to Chapel Hill. I don't ever go to Durham. And I was like, I drive all over the place to go to events. You know, like I went to New Jersey and I still go up there to Trenton and everything. And I'm like, I'll drive all over the place. And I'm like, I'll do events in Chapel Hill. It's only like 40 minutes away. And now I'm like, I have like a 10-mile radius that I drive in and that's it. And then I don't go anywhere else. I'm like, I don't need to leave Raleigh. I don't need the other cities. I'm just going to stay here. Yeah, but I mean, there's, I guess fewer events, especially now. This year has been, I mean, as you know, and everybody else knows, it's
I'm worried about how it's gonna affect not just like the bars and that, but also like the artists that who are counting on the festivals and that who have other like a mode of income, because there's some makers who like they just do a couple festivals, like that's it.
Yep.
And like, what are they doing right now? Like, are they still doing stuff? Are they gonna keep doing stuff when it comes back? If stuff comes back? It's weird.
It is really weird for sure. I think, I don't know, I've talked to some of them and I've had a lot of people ask about the punk rock flea market over and over again, obviously, because they want to know when it's going to happen again. And I'm like, I have no earthly idea. Like spring, maybe on Mars. I really just don't know right now. You know, if the country doesn't implode after November, then we'll pick a new date.
Right.
Oil and Art Walk is happening?
No, it isn't.
Is it for sure not?
Yeah, it's for sure not. The planning for that would have already started.
Yeah, I was like, I forgot. I kept meaning to look, and this just reminded me.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I think maybe they might try to do something online, which we might be helping them with, by the way, just so you know.
Hey. Off the record. This is why I don't talk.
She's derailed the entire conversation. What are we talking?
That's okay. I'm just rambling on like it's my job because I'm once again sleep deprived and I think I didn't take my medication.
Well, that's good because then I don't have to.
Yay!
That works really well. I really did kind of forget.
I'm sorry, I ruined it. We're talking about punk rock flea market and the artists. Are they gonna come back?
Cool stuff happening and finding it.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, I know some of the people are just kind of building up a stock of stuff for when things eventually do open back up again. And I know a lot of people started online stores where they hadn't had one before because you're kind of backed into a corner. Like really online is, the only way to be able to put yourself out there right this second because nobody can get together. So
yeah.
I think Raleigh is starting to do gallery shows. Linda Starr came in today and said that she's got a show at 311 coming up, I think, this month.
Your place at the table? Is that the one?
Oh,
or is that
yeah.
That's the name of their next.
Mm.
Oh, right. I just didn't know if that was the one she's talking about.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
do you know Kenneth from 311? Do you know who's running 311 now?
I know that he's running 311. The only time I've ever met him was at the basement battle.
Okay, I figured you probably met him there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he runs it there now.
This is Linda.
Yeah, we just got one of the
cards
today too. She came in. Oh, I just said that. Never mind.
Wait, look at this thing. Can you see it? I know, I'm trying.
What is going on there? That's amazing.
It's a bear and a lion and a horse and a skeleton.
Thestral? What is that?
I don't know. I just saw a big crazy frame going. I was like, whoa, it's amazing. And then I was like, oh, a little print. Okay. Had to get it.
Perfect.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Have you shifted your approach at all with everything going crazy in the world? I mean, obviously, you have a web store, so you're already moving some stuff on there. But have you shifted what you're doing in general aside from making sure?
Yeah, well, I've had to really do a lot more stuff online, only because I don't want to talk really about the thousands of dollars that I've lost this year by not having shows, but yeah, it's been pretty bad. because of that. Fortunately, people seem to still want to buy things, which is, I guess, kind of surprising. Like both my partner and I thought, like as soon as the lockdown happened and all the shows were canceled, and you know, he goes on tour every year, and isn't obviously this year because there's no shows. We were just like, well, we're sunk. What are we going to do now? Like people are going on unemployment and are being let go from their jobs. Like no one's going to want to buy anything. But I think people had time at home and still had unemployment coming in. And so thankfully, I mean, both him and I have been doing okay. We always have projects that we're working on. He has a book that he finished that's coming out actually in 2 days. I'm going to plug it. It's called Self and Punishment. You guys should check it out. Because it's all about people who work in art and music and what they do to have their own like self-employment and how they kind of survive off of that, and the stories of, you know, what's happened to them and for them since they've been doing that. But yeah, it's basically, I mean, really most of my business right now comes from just posting things online that I've done. So like the dolls, I had posted a picture of the Trailer Park Boys ones, and somebody asked about them and then asked if they could get one, you know, something commissioned for them. And so now every time I post something else, it's like, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, when I post something online, I usually get a commission request from somebody.
Nice.
So really, I mean, like I have the online store, but most of it's just done through social media. I mean, as much as I hate to say that because I have very mixed feelings about Facebook and Instagram and all that and the amount of time that we spend on it and the privacy thing and all of that, but I really can't knock it because I make so much of my income from that, you know, and not even just like from friends, like from strangers too, like just posting in different places. And I do a lot of pop culture stuff, so I'll post it in different forums, or if it's like music related, like there's like the band that I have the shirts releasing for tomorrow, I'll post it in like the noise rock forums or, you know, related things, and usually get some sales from that. It's just kind of, you know, getting your stuff out there is really the biggest problem. So if you're not posting things all the time, then people stop seeing your stuff and they don't think about you anymore. But if you post stuff, even old things that you've done before, you know, then you get business through that most of the time.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of artists, they're not going to like acclimate to that activity. Like, I mean, I see some already that are just, they're not doing anything because there's nothing happening. And I mean,
Yeah.
there could be different reasons for that, but from the people's perspective, like it just looks like they're not making stuff anymore. And like it's such
Yeah.
a gamble for them. Like, yeah, when they start again, if they start again, people might be surprised, or they might have just forgotten about it and not care anymore.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's hard too, especially with everything that's gone on this year. Like, I guess talking about like art and mental health a little bit, you know, you're not always going to want to create things, and depression is a real big, you know, mood killer for creating anything. Like, you know, you can either use it in 2 different ways. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I have gone on anxiety medication since the year has started because I was just a basket case with everything going on. And that allowed me the kind of calm that I needed to be able to still make things. But I mean, if what you make is like, you know, really deeply personal to you and your mental health is tied in with that, then I can understand why people, you know, some artists aren't making things right now. It's really hard, you know, and it's hard to get back into it once you get out of it too, you know, like even if I find if I don't make things for like a week or so, if I go, you know, take a break or I get too busy and I don't have a chance to do it because of, you know, I've got a family and kids, and if I don't get that chance to make it, not only is it hard to get back into it again, but it's almost like my mental health suffers because I'm not creating things and not putting them out there. And then because of that, it makes me not want to necessarily make things as much because I'm upset or depressed. And then it's kind of like this vicious cycle that you have to like lift yourself out of. And I mean, there's so much going on this year. Like, I don't blame people for necessarily not making stuff, you know, it's hard. It's really hard to deal with things right now, for sure.
Yeah, it's a weird time for everyone. Even when things first happened We're in the middle of we were doing March Meet the Maker this year.
Mhm.
A really good job, daily updates, great content, like really in-depth captions. And then when everything happened, like our account just went dead for like 2 weeks. Like we didn't do anything at all.
We're also moving.
Yeah,
Didn't
that's
help.
true too. But I mean, normally that doesn't really slow us down much. But
Well, sure, but I mean that's a lot. Like moving and then everything else happening, and you're dealing with something that like pretty much no one has really dealt with on this scale since like what 1918. I mean, there's been like smaller pandemics in between, but nothing's been like shut down
yeah,
or just dealing with everything going on. It's a lot. It is a whole lot. I'm pretty sure at the beginning of the year too, when all this happened, there was a period of time when I wasn't doing anything either because I kind of gave up almost for a little bit because I was like, who's going to want to buy anything right now?
yeah,
And then I started getting like more upset because of, like I said, not creating things. And so I was like, well, even if they're not going to buy anything, I still need to be making something because, it's not going to do me any good to sit here and just kind of let it fester. I need to actually
yeah.
create things because really, I mean, creating stuff is really very intrinsically tied into my mental health,
Yeah, totally.
So it was, yeah.
That's kind of what got us rolling again too. Was we just kind of started randomly making stuff that eventually turned into products that people were like digging and spending money on. So it kind of motivated us to get going again.
Yeah. It always feels good when people start being interested in your stuff again once you get out there,
Yeah.
Like you find that kind of motivates you to really want to keep making things because you're like, oh wait, people are paying attention to what I'm doing, so I might as well keep doing it instead of just being like,
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have a day where no one comes in at all to the store, and then the next day, like, someone's like, oh, this is a cute button, I'll get it, and it's $1. And I'm like, oh, thank you, cool. And I'm like, we made $1. But
it feels good though. I mean,
it's
like
just
going back to the
when they're excited, even if it's $1.
well, going back to the punk rock flea markets, I mean, it's the same thing. Like physically being there and seeing people like enjoy your things, even if they only buy like a sticker. I mean, that's why I started doing stickers because who the hell can afford, a $500 painting every time they go out? And especially at like the live events, I don't see the Monopoly man running around with his monocle. And did he have a monocle? I don't think wasn't that one of those weird things where people thought he had a monocle, but he didn't?
Mr. Peanut has the monocle.
Well, had the
Mr. Peanut has a monocle. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So like maybe like Mr. Peanut and the Monopoly man are having a day out, but they're not gonna go out and like buy a $500 painting when they're going to a punk rock flea market. So I really quickly realized it's like you have to have kind of like easily consumable, affordable things so people can still appreciate what you do without spending tons of money. And that's the other reason I started the punk rock flea market, is because I really feel like art should be for everyone. And I think no matter what I do, I'm never really going to break into that kind of like fine art world where people are like bidding millions of dollars on your paintings or whatever. Like realistically, I know that that's not going to happen, and I'm fine with that. Like I wouldn't survive in that environment. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I can't schmooze with people, like the only reason I'm comfortable talking to you guys is because I know you and because I'm in a place that I've been a million times. But like art should be affordable, like not all the time. Artists need to be paid what they're worth, and they need to charge more for what they're doing, because I know that people classically undercharge for everything, and myself included. I do it all the time. I'm like, no one's going to pay $50 for this little thing. I'm going to mark it down to like 30. And then I realized like how many hours I spent working on it. And I was like, well, that was a bonehead move, because now I've essentially, just sold it for next to nothing, which is fine. Like I said, sometimes it's just the fun making it and everything, but I do have to pay my bills and I have to feed my kids, so it's hard. But yeah, realistically, I mean, I'm never going to break into that world of like $1 million artists, which is totally fine. I'm not going to be Banksy or whatever, shredding my paintings to people buying them or taping a banana upon the wall. That's just not what I'm about,
I would tape it on the floor.
Oh man.
Favorite thing in the world, like favorite just existing, what's the word, called?
I don't know.
Is the banana peel on the floor.
It sounds so great. It's hilarious. I always try to leave my banana peel in the street.
Throw her banana peel on the sidewalk.
And then laugh.
Just in hopes that sometime
Somebody will go skating down the street.
Not that she'll be back to see, but it's sometime in the future, hopefully someone will step on that banana peel.
I hope someone's watching.
And slip, and you'll hear the noise.
Oh man, I feel like deep in the recesses of my pop culture induced brain that wasn't there a movie where people were yelling in a car and there was a banana peel that got thrown out of a bus window or something and they hit it and went off a cliff.
It was Billy Madison.
Oh yeah,
off the bus.
That's right. Oh yeah, going O'Doyle rules, and then the whole station wagon, the Woody station wagon, flying off the cliff. That's great.
Yeah, I forgot all about that.
Classic.
You ever wonder like how much of your brain is taken up by that kind of thing where it's like, I can remember this scene from this movie, but I probably didn't balance my checkbook correctly, like 10 years ago. And I could, maybe have like a cure for some horrible disease for, but my brain space is instead taken up by Billy Madison, which is really unfortunate.
It's cool to
priorities though,
Yeah. I could cure cancer, but I know every line to this movie and this song, and that's okay.
You cure something else for someone else.
You'll cure boredom for someone who needs to hear a Billy Madison quote.
Yes. Adam Sandler movies aren't even that good, though. That's unpopular opinion. Hot take.
We're gonna have to end this.
Hot take. Not that great. I just feel like he spends a lot of time yelling at the
conversation. We're gonna let you go.
Okay.
We're gonna go watch Madam Sandler movie. Madam Sandler.
I've offended you somehow, and I apologize.
Now you do.
I do want to ask you about one more thing before we do this.
Sure.
Just in the general product and project scheme of things, is there anything you're hoping to get into? Like, I know especially in Raleigh, a lot of the artists are trying to do murals and that, and I feel like that's not quite your thing, at least not from a canvas point of view. But
yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of respect for street art, and I mean, I painted some stuff on the wall here at Rebus Works, which is fun, but that's not really my thing. I don't know. I just kind of want to keep doing what I'm doing and help other artists to do what they do, If anything, I would say maybe the next logical progression for me would be to kind of start like screen printing things. Because right now, like everything is kind of outsourced through other companies. Like I have a threadless store, so, they make everything and take care of logistics, but at the same time, it's like, I don't really see the quality of what goes out. And so that kind of bothers me a little bit. And Bifocal is great. They are by far, the best company that I am working with now as far as like printing and logistics, because I really, aside from like separating layers out of files, I don't have to do anything, just kind of promote it. But yeah, I think screen printing would probably be the next step for me, just because a lot of the stuff that I do seems like it's kind of geared towards that, even though it isn't necessarily. Like everything is like really graphic and kind of brightly colored, and I've always been kind of a fan of like working with different color palettes and kind of experimenting with that. And so I use so many bright colors in what I do. I really like the challenge of kind of scaling that back for screen printing, because you can only use a limited amount of colors with what you're doing without ending up with a shirt that has, like an inch thick crust of ink on the front of it, which nobody wants. So yeah, I guess that would really be the only thing right now, aside from what I'm already doing, that I would, go for. I'm pretty lucky, honestly. I mean, I get a lot of opportunities that I don't want to say fall into my lap, but just everything seems to work out. It doesn't all the time, but it's kind of having a positive attitude towards part of it, I guess, is helpful. and just thinking, well, if I don't do this today, or if, you know, someone doesn't buy something today, there's always tomorrow. Or, you know, maybe I'll try doing this thing, like talking about being kind of a multi-dimensional artist and doing band shirts, and then the paintings and stickers and, you know, graphic design, corporate logos, like any portraits. I mean, really, it's just kind of like seeing what people are interested in at any given moment and finding that balance between like pandering, I guess would be the word for it. Well, you know what I mean? Like, not like, well, I'm going to draw this because they're going to like it, but more like, hey, people seem to be really into shirts right now, so why don't I explore that for a while? And then when that slows down, it's like, well, I need to pivot and start working on something else. And when I do that, then I get more interest, and it also helps like keep things kind of fresh for me too, because I have the attention span of a goddamn fruit fly. So I really need to be able to like do tons of stuff to be able to keep motivated too, I guess. So that is my long rambling answer for your last question.
No, it works. I did actually mean to ask you one other thing earlier.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear some of the artists that you follow, whether it's stylistically or just conceptually, or if there's any artists who you keep up with, whether like on Instagram or just have books of, or anything that you might read regularly when you're trying to feel creative.
I gotta be honest with you, there aren't really a whole lot. Like, I follow a lot of artists on Instagram and Facebook, mainly because I found that filling up my social media with that kind of thing, and maybe unfollowing the people that are, you know, posting the copy and paste this if you want to live through the election supernova something or other. So I follow a lot of artists, but I don't know. I really just try to do my own thing. I know that's a weird thing to say. This is another reason that I'm not really good with like the art community thing, because I want to help other people out, but I'm not real good at following, and I'm kind of a lone wolf, I guess. So yeah. I don't know. I guess I could say like my partner, you know, I really am inspired by what he does. He's like one of the most prolific people I know too. He is constantly working on things. So I have a lot of respect for him for sure. You know, that's maybe a tiny bit of nepotism just because he is my partner, obviously.
No, that's totally acceptable. That's just, that's the bonus of like enjoying that person's art. You just get to enjoy both sides of that person.
Sure. I mean, that's how we even met each other, was through art. Like I was in a record shop and saw something that he had done and bought it, and then ended up following him on social media. And that's, you know, he liked my stuff, I liked his stuff, and we just started talking because of it. So, nice. You know.
Slid into the DMs.
Look at us now. Furiously drawing every evening. Trying to make a living so we're not out on the street dancing for quarters by the freeway.
Jeez. Well, it's a depressing note to end this on, but
I'm really good at that.
So we do appreciate you talking to us and sharing with us.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to shout out your social media real quick?
Oh, sure. I'm Brutalsquid on pretty much everything. So BRUTAL Squid on Instagram, on Threadless, on Facebook, on my Square. Even the brutalsquid.com is my store. I don't do Twitter, so like I said, I'm kind of a Luddite. I don't understand Snapchat. I don't know what your TikTok is. So I just have all of the classic, I guess, avenues. But yeah, you can always reach me at brutalsquid@gmail.com.
Okay.
So yeah, cool.